بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. Alhamdulillah, it's a great honor, like was said earlier, to have Sheikh Abdullah bin Bayya here. His wisdom is, I think, sorely needed in this time. Just a few, I think enough was said for people to give a lot of people food for thought. One of the things that all of you have to do is, the Prophet ﷺ said, for the one present should tell the one who's absent. You know, ash-shahid yuballigh al-ghaib. So people here have to really get this message out to people. We're in a very difficult situation. Like Sidi Abdul Hakim Winter said, tradition or extradition. It's not a joke, and people really have to think about the presence of Muslims, over 25 million Muslims in Western Europe. We have to really think about what we're doing here, what we're going to be planning on doing here in the future. For those of you who have children, you have to really think about what's going to be the situation of your children and your children's children. I mean, these are really serious situations. Unfortunately, we have sufaha. We have people that are simply, they're safih. And I don't care how sincere they are. There's plenty of sincere people out there. But we have people that are fools. They're foolish people. There's people that read things and take them literally. You know, you have naql and you have aql. This is what the Sheikh's talking about. You have naql and you have aql. So unfortunately, we have some naql heads out there. You know, we have people that are not using their intellect when they read verses, when they read these things. And don't think these people haven't been around since the beginning. Really. And they absolutely believe they're rightly guided. They believe they're rightly guided. And our Prophet ﷺ said in a very important hadith, يَحْمِلُ هَذَا الْعِلْمِ مِنْ كُلِّ قَرْنٍ عُدُولُهُ, that this knowledge will be carried in each generation by upright people. يَنْفُونَ عَنْهُ تَحْرِيفَ الْغَالِينَ. They'll repudiate the misquotations of extremists. Tahrif is يُحَرِّفَ الْكَلِمَ عَنْ مَوَاضِعِهِ, is to take something out of context. So the Prophet said that rightly guided scholars will repudiate the misquotations of extremists. وَانْتِحَالَ الْمُبْطِلِينَ, and plagiarisms of people that are trying to undermine the religion or attack the religion. Just fabrications. People that fabricate. وَتَأْوِيلَ الْجَاهِلِينَ, and interpretations of zealots, of ignorant people. Now there's no doubt that the Muslims we are suffering in a lot of different places. But again, this is not new. There have been many, many periods where Islam has been under siege, it's had troubles, it's had difficulties. We have two sunnah. In fact, we have three sunnah. We have the sunnah of the Prophet in Mecca. One of the things that Ibn Taymiyyah said, rahimahullah, is that there's nothing that's abrogated in Islam, that if the same circumstances in which it was applicable return, then it becomes applicable. In other words, there's no absolute abrogation. There's no verse in the Quran that's absolutely abrogated, with the exception of about 4 verses in which there's no difference of opinion on. I mean, there's really only a handful of verses. All of the verses in the Quran, وَاصْبِرْ عَلَى مَا يَقُولُونَ وَهْجُرْهُمْ هَجْرًا جَمِيلًا. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, لَسْتَ عَلَيْهِمْ بِمُسَيْطِرٍ لَسْتَ عَلَيْهِمْ بِوَكِيلٍ لَسْتَ عَلَيْهِمْ بِجَبَّارٍ. I mean, all these verses in the Quran in which the Prophet was told to be patient, those are all applicable because that's the sunnah of Mecca. One of the things Hudayf ibn al-Yaman said, he said that in the end of time, يُخَيَّرُ الْمَرْءُ بَيْنَ الْعَجْزِ وَالْفُجُورِ. And one of the Sahaba, one of the Tabi'een listening to this said, قَبَّحَ اللَّهُ الْعَجْزِ. He said, قَبَّحَكَ اللَّهُ أَنْتَ. He said, الْعَجْزُ خَيْرٌ مِنَ الْفُجُورِ. That there will be a time when people will be given a choice between powerlessness and between going to extremes. Fajara means to go beyond a limit. And one of the tabi'een heard him say that, and he said, may Allah make ugly powerlessness. And he said, may Allah make you ugly. Powerlessness is better than going to outside of the boundaries. So the sunnah of ittihad, the sunnah of being oppressed, is Mecca. Look how the Prophet ﷺ behaved. One of the reasons that I stayed a Muslim was when I studied the seerah, the period of Mecca was an overwhelming period. Anybody that studies that has to come to that conclusion about our Prophet ﷺ. It's what made him great. And if you deny the Meccan period, you're denying something that's absolute. There's more time in Mecca than there was in Medina. 13 out of 23 years. So if you deny the Meccan period and just say that that was all just strategies until he got into power, and then at that point you stop forgiving, and you stop overlooking, and you stop, I mean, that's as if our Prophet ﷺ, and may Allah, we seek refuge in Allah from misunderstanding who the Messenger of Allah is. كَانَ أَحْلَمَ النَّاسِ. The Prophet ﷺ was the most forbearing of people. And this is what we have to return to our community. Because we've created a culture, there's a culture now in which people can't see any other way out than this reactionary mode. And we've been spinning our wheels for far too long, and the Muslims really need to think at a deeper level. You know, Einstein, and it's useful, the hikmah is wisdom. Wherever it is, wherever you find it, you should follow it. Einstein said the definition of madness is to do the same thing over and over again and expect different results. And the Muslims really, we have to ask ourselves about what we're doing, about our strategies, about our attitudes and behaviors. And then finally about Denmark, because you're having your demonstration tomorrow. I find it really odd that the very thing that we are accusing so many people in the West of doing towards the Muslims, that we blame all the Muslims for the actions of a handful of people. This is the same thing that Muslims end up doing. I mean, this was a fool. Whoever did that, it was a fool. And unfortunately, there's some malevolent intent there. You know, I don't have any doubt, because it wasn't like an artist who drew some pictures and then there was an editorial decision about whether they print them or not. It was actually somebody who wanted to find somebody to do this. But part of this, unfortunately, and we have to be honest, part of this is the Muslim community in Denmark has failed to be an upright community. Some of the really serious social problems with Muslims in Europe are occurring in Denmark. And you can study the situation there, because there's plenty of statistics that have been done on this. And that's what we have to ask ourselves as a community. Have we been honoring our Prophet? In other words, have we done anything in our behavior in these lands that has led to people having a bad opinion of who our Prophet ﷺ is? Because we're ambassadors of the Messenger of Allah. We are his ambassadors. And people are going to judge him based on our actions. And you cannot honor your Prophet by dishonoring his sunnah. You cannot honor your Prophet by dishonoring his sunnah. If you want to honor the Prophet ﷺ, really, if you want to honor him, then practice his character. Practice his moral probity. Practice his excellence and his virtue towards people. Practice his forgiveness. Practice his ability to smile despite all of the incredible difficulties. This is an age, unfortunately, it's an age of brawling. We're dealing with people now that we've gone down into the ghetto and we're just swinging it out. This is not an age of discussion. This is not an age of discourse. This is something the poet Yeats said in a poem that he wrote in the earlier part of the last century. He said, "Come, let us mock at the great that had such burdens on the mind and toiled so hard and late to leave some monument behind, nor thought of the leveling wind." And then he goes on, "Come, let us mock at the wise, come, let us mock at the good," and finally mock mockers after that never lifted a hand maybe to help good, wise, or great, to bar that foul wind out, for we traffic in mockery. And this is the age that we're living in. It's not an age of virtue. It's not an age that respects the other. And this includes the Muslim and the non-Muslim alike. I mean, this is the age that we're living in. And Islam is a high religion, and it calls to the highest human ideals. And we as Muslims have to live up to that. If we want to have the moral high ground, If we want to have the moral high ground where the sacred is honored, then we have to honor the sacred in ourselves and in others. But if we lose that moral high ground, then we sound like hollow men. We sound like hollow men. We've lost our moral high ground. When we have anti-Semitism in our newspapers all over the Arab world, what moral high ground do we have to talk about what's put in cartoons and what's not put in cartoons? We have to be people of truth in order to call others to the truth. The Quran says to the people of the book, لَسْتُمْ عَلَى شَيْءٍ حَتَّى تُقِيمَ التَّوْرَةَ وَالْإِنْجِيلَ. You have nothing until you apply your Torah and your gospel. Well, the mafhum al-awla, the understanding, the a priori understanding of that verse is you have nothing until you apply your Quran. Muslims, we have nothing until we apply our Quran. وَقُولُ لِلنَّاسِ حُسْنًا. We condemn this, and we recognize the double standards in the West. When you have people now that are being prosecuted in England for holding up a sign, cut off the heads of anybody that criticizes the Prophet Muhammad. I mean, that person's not going to go and cut off anybody's head. They're just expressing, and it's more silliness, but if you're going to prosecute him for inciting to hatred, then attacking the messenger of God, something that 1.3 billion people hold sacred, that's not inciting to hatred. So there are double standards here, and we recognize those double standards, and I'm opposed to those double standards. But I also recognize the fact that we as Muslims will not have a strong moral voice until we ourselves are applying our truths. We have to do it ourselves. And Denmark is a nation of good people. And this stupidity of demonizing an entire nation because of the actions of one or two fools in that nation, that is as silly as condemning the Saudi Arabians for the actions of a handful of Saudi Arabians and their criminal activities. The Danish defend human rights in the Muslim world. The embassies that were in Egypt, the Danish embassy actually is involved in monitoring human rights transgressions in prisons in Egypt. I mean, this is the work that the Danish have been doing. And trampling on their flag is absolutely unacceptable. First of all, the flag has a religious symbol on it, which is the cross. And second of all, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, لا تسب الذين يدعون من دون الله فيسب الله عدوا بغير علم. Do not curse the idols of other peoples because they will curse God. So there's people that will take the Saudi Arabian flag that has La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah and stomp on it as a retaliation. And the Prophet said, let not one of you curse his parents. They said, how do we curse our parents? By cursing their parents. And they in turn curse your parents. These are the type of things that we have to break down as a community. I really believe the onus is on us. We have to tell them who our Prophet ﷺ is. Whoever that caricature was, I don't recognize him because that's not my Prophet. That's some poor man's projection in his own self of complete misunderstanding. And I reject that. And I reject any insult or denigration. Our Prophet ﷺ, we honor him and we love him, but we should honor him and love him by living up to his words, by living up to his religion, and then by telling people about him, who he was. Not just in our words, but in our actions. Jazakumullah khairan wa assalamu alaikum.
الحمد لله رب العالمين اللهم صل وبارك على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما اللهم اغفر لنا ذنوبنا وإسرافنا في أمرنا اللهم إنا نسألك أن تنظر إلينا نظرة مرحومة لا تدع لنا بها ذنبا إلا غفرته ولا هما إلا فرجته ولا فقيرا إلا أغنيته ولا جاهلا إلا علمته ولا ضالا إلا هديته ولا حاجة من حوائج الدنيا والآخرة هي لك رضا ولنا صلاح إلا قضيتها ويسرتها برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين يا رب العالمين اللهم انزل علينا السكينة والطمأنينة وافتح لنا بفتوحاتك الربانية وأصلح حالنا وبالنا ومآلنا وأصلح أزواجنا وذرياتنا وألهمنا رشدنا وانزل علينا رحمتك وبركاتك يا أرحم الراحمين يا أرحم الراحمين يا أرحم الراحمين ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار ربنا آتنا من لدنك رحمة وهيئ لنا من أمرنا رشدا وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم